My boyfriend started asking to join me in my girls' night in. Every time I tried to say no, he'd be like, "I have to join or you'll have to cancel." It made me and the girls miserable having to sit there with him in the middle. This past Friday he insisted to join us again. I had enough. I came up with an idea to get him to hate hanging out with us. Made a plan and told the girls what we were going to do, and they were down for OT. The girls came and my boyfriend immediately sat with us and started ruining our conversations by steering them towards him / his work / his achievement. So here's what I did. I started bringing up gross / embarrassing subjects, and the girls were eating them up by talking about them in details. Subjects like sevks, periods, his most sensitive spot, cramp diarrhea, hairy legs, fart getting trapped in the vulva and coming out the front, squeezing shit out of our faces, cramp diarrhea, dirty underwear, and again, cramp diarrhea. We talked about this stuff in boring details, like, I could feel his discomfort without even looking at him. But God, when I turned to see why, he got quiet suddenly. He was getting red in the face, and had sweat all over his forehead. I bet he found himself unable to relate to this subject, thus couldn't take part in the conversation. He got up from the couch ready to head out. I looked at him and asked where he was going, and he was like, I just remembered that I have an important meeting with a guy in about 10 minutes and I have to go now. He rushed out telling us to have fun. The girls and I started laughing hysterically. He came home and berated me, saying I made him feel uncomfortable / sick with the horrible subjects I kept bringing. I said, "What you talking about? This is the typical stuff girls talk about all the time," but he insisted I made him upset and caused him to leave. He declined to speak to me and been quiet since then. This is his apartment. He tells me who is and isn't allowed to come, and I thought this was fine since it's his place. Though I help with the bills, but he makes so much more as the head of security in his company, so that's that. I just can't believe how dense and blind I've been to his negative ways. He's still giving me the silent treatment, and I've decided it's just a lot to take. And so I'm temporarily moving in with one of the girls and will now be definitely reconsidering few things. Been with Stephanie for a little over 3 years. More or less relationship is good. She tends to be way overdramatic when we fight, which isn't often. But I can usually talk her down and things work out. When Stephanie and I first started dating, she mentioned a few times in kind of a mysterious, I thought it was attention seeking, still do, way that she had some kind of mental illness or mental health struggle. Eventually, probably 2 or 3 months in, she came out and told me in a really serious conversation that she has body dysmorphia and thinks she's obese and hates herself for it. Now let me be clear, I love her the way she is, wouldn't change a thing. I don't mind her weight whatsoever. But even when she said it initially, I almost thought it was a joke. Stephanie is obese. I'm not good at guessing weight, and she's never told me her weight, but I know she's 5 feet 4 inches and a size 22 in pants. She's by all standards obese. I don't mind it at all. I'm attracted to her. I think she's beautiful. I would never ask her to change a thing. It didn't come up again for a while, but last fall she took a psychology course for her college degree and they talked about mental illness, and it came back up. She came in one night almost happy, in a weird way, saying that she understands everything that's wrong with her because they talked about BD in class and it all makes sense. She has never been diagnosed by a medical professional and can't see a doctor for lack of health insurance. Ever since then, she talks about it a lot. I'm not one to poke at people just to poke, so I just let it be. But she talks about it all the time. She blames arguments we have on her BD. She uses it as an excuse to eat poorly and not take care of herself. Because she is straight up convinced that she is smaller than she is and that the person she sees in the mirror is a dysmorphic situation. She is part of an online BD support group and talks openly to me about how she's met people who finally understand her. And she gives them advice and guidance based on her struggle with BD. She's pointed to actresses like Mindy Kaling and compared the actress's body to her actual body versus BD body, and says it's nice to see herself represented on screen. No offense intended to my girlfriend, but that's not her body type. She is much bigger than that. I'm getting to the point where I don't know what to do. She uses it as an excuse for all her behavior. I honestly don't know if she truly thinks she has BD or if she just uses it to justify herself. When we first moved in together, she would cover all the sizes on the tags of her clothes with Sharpie so I wouldn't see them. She's since stopped doing that, or only does it when she remembers. But it made me think she might be aware of her size and just tries to pretend she has BD so no one can talk to her about it. I know this is a weird situation. I'd like to get her or us into counseling, but she doesn't have insurance and goes to a community college that doesn't offer student mental health services. I'm not sure what to do. 6 years ago, my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife Josie. I have always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, she kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth, because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt rarely ever visited and didn't answer our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was dying lonely. Last night Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he'd focus more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a bastard and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd just grow up to be a whore like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than him as my son and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted, and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college and Josie was known as a party girl. Before that, Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home. Me and my wife, Jessie, had our daughter 2 years ago. Jessie is a smoker. She doesn't smoke a lot, but she consumes 2/3 a day. She wanted to be the one who got pregnant, and I told her that she couldn't smoke at any point in the pregnancy, and only after our baby stopped breastfeeding, she could start consuming again. She agreed. I'm against smoking. I don't smoke, but it doesn't bother me that much other people smoke, and to my delight, Jessie was never a person who smelled like cigarettes despite being a smoker. The reason I'm against it's that my father died of lung cancer, and guess what? He smoked. When our daughter was born, I managed to stay at home for 1 year and 3 months because it hit the pandemic and home office, so we could both take care of it. Jessie also took advantage of the home office. Same company, I'm in a higher position. When our company asked for employees to come back from the home office, we decided that we didn't want to put her in childcare yet, and we decided together that I would come back, and she would quit to stay at home all the time. Currently, we have a fair division of tasks at home. When I get home from work, I take care of our daughter so she can rest, and 2 days a week, part-time, I work at home so as not to overload. I know she stays overwhelmed, but I try to help. Recently, our daughter weaned and Jessie came to talk to me that she wanted to finally start smoking again. I said that I wouldn't pay for them, but I pay for everything. I even proposed to rearrange my schedule in case she wanted to do some freelancer. She's also a designer. But I wouldn't give her the money. THR cigarettes are my limit. She was annoyed, saying that we agreed on her being Psalm and that I would provide financially for the family, including her expenses, and I am going behind our agreed. I never paid back / would pay for a cigarette of hers, and she has known this for years. She's still mad at me, saying I'm using being the breadwinner to not let her smoke and forcing her to look for another way to earn money to buy something she wants. I don't know if I'm wrong, but cigarettes are a choice and a bad addiction. I don't feel comfortable paying for it. Given my family history, I always made it very clear that I would never pay for a cigarette. When we made the decision for her to be Psalm, I told her I wouldn't feel right paying for her cigarette, and she reassured me that it was something I wouldn't have to worry about. She does freelance to make some purchases she wants. There are months when we are tighter and we can't do some shopping, so she does freelancing. It's rare, but it happens, and on those days, our daughter stays with me even if it's at my service. I never limited any of her purchases, ever, if not because of tight money. For more extravagant purchases of hers that I can't afford, she freelances and buys. So I suggested she do one a month that covers her entire cigarette stash, and I would help by staying with our daughter. She is not entirely financially dependent on me. When she wants to buy something that I can't afford with our money, she makes a design request.